Pablo Picasso was far from an ordinary child. Even as a child, he was considered extremely talented, but no one could have imagined that he would become one of the most famous artists in history. Picasso was born in the Spanish city of Malaga in 1881. His father, José Ruiz Blasco, was an artist and drawing teacher. From an early age, Pablo watched his father work, who often used him as a model for his lessons. One day, José noticed that Pablo could draw faster and more accurately than many of his adult students. And then something amazing happened. Pablo surpassed his father in skill to such an extent that José refused to draw at all. He admitted, "My son is better than me." One day, at the age of just 9, Pablo completed his first painting, titled Picador. It depicted a bullfighter in a bullfighting arena. For a boy who was just beginning to grasp the basics of art, this was an incredible accomplishment. The family supported the boy's talent, even if it required sacrifice. When Pablo was 13 years old, they moved to Barcelona so he could attend a prestigious fine arts school. However, Pablo was different. He didn't want to follow the rules. Instead of copying ancient statues, he painted as he felt. One of his teachers once said, "This boy will either become a great artist or nothing." Picasso was persistent and not afraid to make mistakes. For example, he could paint the same scene all day long, trying different approaches. His method was chaotic, but the result was always impressive. It was this persistence that allowed him at the age of 15 to create a painting, First Communion, which looked as if it was painted by an adult professional. By this point, Pablo already felt confident in his skill. He began experimenting with new styles, surprising even the most experienced artists. But his early successes weren't just gratifying, they were frightening. A critic once wrote, "This boy paints like an old man, but with the soul of a child." In Picasso's life, early talent played a dual role. On the one hand, he opened the door to the world of art. On the other, deprived him of a carefree childhood. Already in adolescence, he felt a great responsibility for his future and the future of his family. This shaped his character, independent, ambitious, but at the same time complex. Sometimes art becomes a reflection of pain, and sometimes it becomes a reflection of hope. There were two such moments in Picasso's life that completely changed his art. Blue and pink periods are not just stages of his career, they are emotional portraits of two completely different worlds that the artist went through. The beginning of the blue period is associated with a tragic event. Pablo lost a close friend, Carlos Casagemas, who committed suicide because of unhappy love. Picasso was deeply shaken. He was only 20 years old, and he was suddenly confronted with the dark side of life. This grief came out in his paintings, filled with blue and cold tones that seemed to convey his inner longing. One of the most famous works of this time, Old Man with a Guitar. The painting depicts a gaunt musician, lonely and immersed in his thoughts. Blue shades here are not just a color, but a symbol of depression and loss. This was Picasso trying to understand a world where people can voluntarily pass away. But the most shocking thing is that at this point, almost no one was buying his paintings. People didn't want to see suffering. The artist was poor. He had to choose between food and canvases. He ended up painting on cardboard, on wallpaper, and even on top of old works. There is a popular story that in his youth, Pablo Picasso had no money for firewood, and being in poverty, he supposedly burned his paintings to keep warm. While this sounds dramatic and emphasizes the difficult stages of his life, there is no historical confirmation of this fact. Soon after going through a difficult time, Picasso began to look for inspiration in more joyful things. It was as if his art began to smile. He moved to France and discovered the circus. It was there that he found the heroes for his paintings: acrobats, clowns, jugglers. These people, who every day fought for their lives and applause, became a symbol of hope for Picasso. One of the most famous paintings of this time was Girl on a Balloon. It depicts a fragile ballerina balancing on a balloon, and next to her is a sturdy circus performer. This work is full of warmth and light colors, such as pink, beige, and gold. But there was an irony behind it all. Circus performers, although they were a symbol of joy, actually led difficult and poor lives. Picasso found in them a reflection of his struggles. During the blue period, Picasso did not eat for long periods to feel closer to the poor people he portrayed. And during the pink, he sometimes lived with circus performers to better understand their lives. At the beginning of the 20th century, Picasso started looking for something new. He became bored with copying reality the way others had done. Instead, he decided to show how things looked from different angles at the same time. The first high-profile step was his painting The Maidens of Avignon, painted in 1907. It depicted 5 women, but not in the way viewers were used to. Their faces and bodies were broken into angular shapes resembling shards of glass. Critics called the work insane, with one saying, "It looks like a nightmare that torments the mind." Nevertheless, Picasso was convinced it was the future of art. Cubism changed everything. Artists used to try to paint the world as the eye sees it. Picasso, on the other hand, showed that art could convey ideas, emotions, and even time. It was not only beautiful, but also complex. Viewers had to solve the paintings like riddles. At an auction in 2015, his painting Women of Algiers, created in the Cubist style, was sold for a record $179 million. Picasso's first great love was Olga Koklova, a Russian ballerina. They met in 1917 when Picasso was working on the design for the ballet parade. Olga was exquisite, sophisticated, and quite unlike anyone Picasso had met before. In 1918, they married, and their marriage was the beginning of a new chapter in his life. But their happiness did not last long. Olga was used to luxury and order, while Picasso was a man of chaos. Their relationship began to crumble when Picasso took a mistress, a young girl named Marie-Thérèse Walter. Olga left him, but could never forget his betrayal. She retained a grudge for the rest of her life, and Picasso did not even bother to divorce her. He often depicted Olga Koklova in his paintings as a torn figure, as a symbol of a broken relationship. Picasso was inspired by women, but his love often turned violent. He himself once said, "For me, there are only 2 types of women, goddesses and doormats." For those around him, this meant one thing. First, he admired them, but then he suppressed them with his character. Marie-Thérèse, one of his most famous muses, was young and naive when Picasso began his relationship with her. He painted her in his delicate paintings filled with light. But Marie-Thérèse soon realized that she was just one of many in his life. She committed suicide a few years after his death, having never gotten over the trauma. Another woman, Dora Maar, came to symbolize a darker period in Picasso's life. He depicted her in paintings with distorted facial features, as if he was trying to show her inner suffering. In 1937, the small Spanish village of Guernica was almost completely destroyed. Nazi aircraft supporting the Spanish nationalists bombed it, killing hundreds of civilians, including women and children. This bombing shocked the world. Picasso learned of the tragedy from the newspapers. It pained him to watch his native country suffer violence and destruction. At this point, he decided that he had to react, and in a few months he created a monumental painting measuring almost 8 by 4 meters. The painting depicts the horrors of war, screaming people, terrified animals, destroyed houses. But the painting does not have a single drop of blood. Everything is painted in black and white colors, as if it were a photograph from a newspaper chronicle. Guernica came to symbolize the suffering of all victims of war, not just one village. It spoke of the senselessness of violence, of how war destroys all life. This picture was exhibited in Paris at the International Exhibition, and it immediately caused a loud resonance. And even years later, it hasn't lost its power. Picasso was an incredibly prolific artist. During his life, he created more than 50,000 works, paintings, sculptures, prints, engravings, ceramics, and even scenery for the theater. In his final years, he lived in his home in the south of France with his wife, Jacqueline Roque. There, he continued to work every day, as if he was afraid that he would not have time to finish everything he had planned. Despite his immense fame, Picasso was never rich in the usual sense. He spent his money on materials, helping friends and supporting loved ones. Picasso died at the age of 91 right at work. He finished another painting that day, and in the evening he hosted a dinner for friends. No one expected it to be his last night. After Picasso's death, his legacy became a subject of discussion and controversy. He left a huge number of works that are now valued at millions of dollars. There is a Picasso museum in Paris that houses over 5,000 of his works, as well as personal belongings and letters. This place has become a real treasure for those who want to understand him as a man and an artist.